Hello, this is a homily for the 14th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And as you know, during Ordinary Time, we learn a lot more of the detail about who we are and who God is and how to live. So today we are hearing about the God who we serve and worship and love. The first reading is taken from the prophet Zechariah, and it's a prophecy that says, "Rejoice heartily, O daughter of Zion. See, your king shall come to you." That sets the theme for all the readings, that word king, because in fact we are learning about a real kind of authority which is not the kind of authority that those people of that time would have been used to. Very arrogant, very public, very oppressive. Here you are being told, your king, the king who is of your people and who is going to care for you. So he is a just Savior, again, exceptional among some of the Eastern kings. He is meek. He shall proclaim peace to the nations. And the only thing that doesn't change, his dominion shall be from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. In other words, this new king who is coming, with all this very different image of kingship, is still going to rule the entire earth. The psalm picks up this characteristic of this kind of king. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness. The Lord is good to all. An exceptional kind of authority there, and compassionate toward all his works. Again, very different kind of leadership, very different kind of kingship. The fourth verse picks up this theme, and it goes as follows. The Lord is faithful. How often are leaders faithless? He is holy in all his works. How often are leaders demonic in the way they work? The Lord lifts up all who are falling. Here is a king who can really reach down to his people, even those who are fallen, instead of simply ignoring them or not even thinking that they exist. He raises up all who are bowed down. Now there's a play on words here, because bowing down would be the normal attitude of the subject before the king. You bow down before your king. But here you have the Lord raising up all who are bowed down. In other words, he's not expecting you to grovel. He is not expecting you to act in this excessively humble way. Respectful, yes, and that will come out in other readings, but certainly not crawling before the presence of the Almighty King, even though that, as far as God is, with respect to God, maybe we should be that conscious of just how awesome God is. The second reading picks up something slightly different. Obviously, it comes from the New Testament, letter to the Romans, and here you have Paul explaining the source of how we live in this world. And that source now is not the impulses of the flesh. He uses the word flesh and says, you are not in the flesh. Well, obviously he knows that we are fleshly beings, but he's basically saying you're not living from the impulses of your flesh, from the lusts of your heart, from the lusts of your eyes. You are instead living in the Spirit, and of course this is an existence where our spirits are fed by the Spirit of God. And if we do this, then, he says, we are not debtors in the flesh. In other words, if we don't live in terms of the impulses of the flesh, then we don't get taken over by the flesh and just simply live from lust to lust to lust, appetite to appetite to appetite. Instead, we live according to the Spirit. Then if we do that, and notice here the Spirit is capital S, so this is the Spirit of God who is feeding our spirits, elevating our spirits. And if you think about how human beings are constituted, our spirits are meant to rule our bodies, not the other way around. And this is a lot of what he's getting at. So if we have the humility, in other words, the proper attitude to God, we can live by the Spirit. Therefore, we put to death the deeds of the body, and we do something else that Spirit does. We live eternally, because in fact, Spirit is eternal, flesh is not. And we know we have enough reminders of the temporary nature of the flesh. So what we're seeing is just hidden in the background behind what Paul is telling us, that God is generous enough and literally open enough to give us his Spirit as the power that will transform us and make us the new creation. Moving on to the acclamation then, it takes a line out of the gospel. You have revealed to the little ones the mysteries of the kingdom. Here's again a sign of God's incredible generosity, that he simply opens up his internal life to us, and he reveals it not to those who think they're so great or so wealthy or so important, but to the little ones. And to the little ones, which could be literally little children, but also to those who are little, who realize, okay, I am not the whole universe. The whole world doesn't revolve around me. Here you have, again, this sign of the importance of humility. Then in the gospel, Jesus first of all starts off, this is Matthew 11, starts off by praising God. I praise you that you've hidden these things from the wise and the learned. And of course, this is where the line for the gospel acclamation comes from. Yes, Father, such has been your gracious will. In other words, this is the way you planned it. You are reaching out to us in a very specific way that does not involve lording it over us, oppressing us, making us making the power of God felt. We should feel the power of God, but if we're humble enough and appreciate this side of God, which is graciousness, generosity, forgiveness, and so forth, then we will truly see the power of God, that he can teach us, reach us in this way. Moving on then, he gives really the focus of the gospel. Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened. This now is the introduction to his little lesson about the yoke that he is bringing with him. And he says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Basically, learn from me. That's the core of this whole little lesson. And the lesson is, if we learn how to live before God from Jesus Christ, then we will be carrying the yoke of Jesus. Have a good day.